What's up, guys? How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to the Twin Suns Podcast YouTube channel, and today I want to break down a new deck that I've been playing with a lot in the most recent expansion, which is Guardians of the Ancient, and this deck is Zilean and Swain. I think they're two unique champions, and they have a very unique synergy. There's a little bit more than meets the eye, so I want to go through it and kind of break down what the deck is, what it's doing, and some of the synergy, and then, offer the deck codes if you guys want to try out the deck and give any feedback. We can kind of build this as a community. But the deck name for now is called Crocs and Clocks. So here we go. We have Zilean and Swain. 3 Ancient Preparation, 3 Ravenous Flock, 2 Scrying Sands, 3 Chronomancers, a Death Lotus, 3 Imperial Demolitionist, 3 Zilean, 3 Arachnoid Sentry, 2 Death's Hand, 3 Merciless Hunters, 2 Noxian Fervors, 1 Guillotine, 1 Rite of Negation, 3 Swain, 2 Raz Bloodmane, 2 Spirit Fire, and of course, any good Swain deck will have 3 Leviathans. So, the synergy is kind of interesting. So, Zilean's the new champion here. He's a 1-4, which is pretty solid, but he's shuffling in time bombs into your deck. So this deck is using Zilean really as a support piece. He is not going to level up all that often. He can ever occasionally, but when he does, it's really not like the end goal. You're not getting a ton of cards back to really push out a ton of damage or anything. It's not like Zilean Go Hard, which is really trying to make Go Hard happen again so you can play pack your bags. It's nothing like that. It's really just, if he levels, that's bonus. If not, he's just creating these time bombs in your deck, and hopefully you can find 1 or 2 with all the predict that you're using. The time bombs work really well in this deck because it's a board damage across the board, which is good for 2 things. 1, leveling up Swain. They have 3 units on board. It just acts like a red card from TF, so it'll deal 1 to each of the units and 1 to the Nexus. That'll give you 4 non-combat damage and level up Swain 1/3 of the way, which is really great. The second reason is actually it is a Nexus ping, so it kind of works at the same as the round start of the Leviathan for when Swain stuns the back row enemies. This works in a similar fashion, right? The turn gets passed, time bomb goes off, damages a bunch of stuff, hits the Nexus for 1. That, if Swain is already leveled up, will proc his leveled up ability, stunning the strongest back row unit, which is really fun. The last thing that's really just good about time bombs in this deck is that Noxus and Shurima have very specific draw cards, and the time bomb, even though it thins your deck, it does offer a draw. So a lot of times you can, in like a slightly burnish type deck or a Swain deck, you can kind of run low on the ability to draw a lot of cards. I think that's why TF and Swain were so popular together, because TF, that whole package offered a lot of flexibility in that sense. But in this sense, essentially you're thinning out your deck, but you're kind of counteracting that with how much predict you have. So you have so much predict that you can find what you need consistently. And if you have the extra mana, you can try to predict into a time bomb, get the time bomb off, and then essentially get a card draw and the damage procs there. So that's what it's doing. That's what Zilean's doing in this deck. I just kind of mentioned what Swain's doing. We obviously want Swain to level up by dealing 12 non-combat damage. Once he does level up, he's a absolute madman. He is stunning the backboard consistently when you have Leviathan, and if you get a Nexus strike through, you do tons of damage. The thing that a lot of decks don't do with Swain is really attempt to get Nexus strikes through. Some people run Might to give him Overwhelm because that can proc the Nexus strike. But I'm actually pairing this fearsome keyword here with Swain, along with stunning the strongest enemies, and then pairing it with Raz Bloodmane. So originally I even had the Auroch Glintthorn in this deck. That's kind of a cutesy combo with Time Bomb. Time Bomb can damage everything, and then Auroch Glintthorn can be a 6/6 who on attack can stun all damaged units, which is pretty cool. But I actually found Raz Bloodmane just to do the same job way better. So she's a 7-drop 6/6 with Fearsome, but on attack gives all enemies -2 attack. So it's really solid for being able to get that damage through, or get Swain through with a massive Nexus strike to do absolute crazy damage. So there's not a whole lot of Fearsome, but what there is there's Raz, Swain, and now this new 3-drop, the Merciless Hunter, is really absurd for all of this mid-range damage. This is a really good way to pick off very important pieces, but also really just good if you have Raz out later, you can blast through a bunch of extra damage with this Fearsome unit. So you have multiple Fearsome units that can get lots of damage through, which is great for Swain. And then we're just kind of running a real big package of removal, right? We're using, well, first I guess we can talk about the predict mechanic. We do have Ancient Prep, Scrying Sands, Chronomancer, and Zilean. So they're all predict cards here. And that's really enough. It's plenty. That's a lot of predict. And it's all cheap. It's all very cheap predict cards. You get it consistently, and it really just helps you flesh out the middle turns. So really, you're going to end up mulliganing for Ancient Prep or Chronomancer or Zilean. That's kind of what you want mainly. You can also keep Arachnoid Sentry, but you have those, and then you kind of just pick out how your turn wants to go. Do you want to find a Merciless Hunter because you want to apply pressure? Do you want to find just more removal like Death's Hand just to kind of slow them down? Or do you want to find, hey, I really need Swain on 5 this game because I'm leveling them up quick? You can try to do that. So the predict really helps your curve there. And the reason I'm running a lot of 1-ofs, like 1 Death Lotus, 1 Guillotine, 1 Rite of Negation, these things, and you can even run more, but I'm also running just a lot of 2-ofs, is because of all the predict. So predict is a really interesting mechanic that essentially lets you run a lot less of 3-ofs and still consistently find those things, right? Death's Hand isn't great into all matchups, but it's good into a lot, and you can use predict effectively to get this when you need it. Same reason Noxian Fervor does it, right? Noxian Fervor is in here. It's not a aggro deck that we're trying to smash face, but this is 6 damage for Swain's level up, so it's a really good way to level Swain up. On top of that, it's also just a good card to have in certain situations, so predict helps you actually keep that. Same exact reasoning for Guillotine and Rite of Negation and etc. These are just cards that are very unique and good in specific situations, but our deck doesn't do enough poke damage every single game where Guillotine deserves to be a 2 or 3 of. So keeping it as a 1 of, combining that with predict allows us to essentially have it when we need it in very key situations, but not be worried about drawing too many of the card or anything like that, which is really good. The end game, like I said, is Swain and Leviathan. Pretty standard, it's just the early game's a little bit different. But the other 2 cards that really mix this up, like I said, are Raz. Raz has won me so many games. It's actually pretty crazy how good she is in this deck. Previously, was having a hard time finding where she really fit, and there's a lot of Fearsome that you can fit in from Shurima, Noxus, and Freljord. Or I'm sorry, not Freljord, Shadow Isles. But I don't think you really need that much Fearsome for her to be pretty good. I think she fits in pretty well here, and you combine her, even if you want to, with Spirit Fire. I can't talk about how amazing Spirit Fire is into this meta A with a 0 Aurelia running around. By turn 5 or 4, even if you're saving your spell mana, you can hit them with a crazy big Spirit Fire to, potentially kill Aurelia if she's not leveled up and slow down all their attacks. But on top of that, this deals so much damage for Swain. If they have a full board and everything takes 2, Swain's leveled from 1 card. If it's just 3, he's half leveled. It's crazy. Swain levels up so quick with Spirit Fire. It's absolutely crazy. And Spirit Fire is an amazing card. But even if you don't have Leviathan, if you have on 7, you have Raz, and then on 8, it's your attack turn, and you have Spirit Fire, you can use this offensively so you can get a ton of fearsome damage. Those 2 combined will lower every attack on the enemy's side by 4, and you will get fearsome damage through for sure at that point, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, it's a lot of flexibility cards, and there's a lot more you could add in here. Again, like I said, Zilean's a support piece for sure. He's an interesting support piece at that, but you could definitely just run like a Draven in here if you want, and there's other cards. You can even run like a LeBlanc because you're doing a decent amount of damage, but Zilean is just offering this weird mechanic of kind of this consistent curve. I really like the predict here in this deck, and I would even want more of it. Now, there are other fearsome cards. I know there is a lot of fearsome synergy here. You could put in Kaari here as well, if I can spell it right. Search mechanic's not working. But yeah, you could essentially put in this guy as well. The Kaari the Returned, I believe his name is. If I can find him. Here he is. That's awkward. But yeah, you can even put in Kaari the Returned here, which is a pretty cool tech as well. You are protecting a decent amount. It's just realistically, he doesn't do a whole lot besides just be a thick body. He doesn't end the game enough, and he's a great support piece for Fearsome to get through, but you don't really need that extra Fearsome damage, if that makes sense. So I don't think you need him fully, but he's still pretty cool, like I said. And, there's other predict cards you could even add as well, right? And there's even just more 1-ofs you could put in. If you're seeing more landmarks, play around with this deck. Throw in a Scorched Earth, throw in 1 Quicksand, throw in a Might if you want. You can throw in Kaari the Student as well if you just need a thicker body. There's a lot of just interesting options here, and it's one of my favorite things about this predict mechanic is that you can really run a lot of 1-ofs. You could drop all 3 Imperial Demolitionists and just sprinkle in a bunch of 1-ofs that you think are important, and you'll still hit a pretty consistent curve with this deck. So final tips for you guys, Mulligan. You want to keep Zilean, you want to keep the Aspiring Chronomancer and Ancient Prep. You can also keep Hunter or the Arachnoid Sentry if you see those. And if you do have those, you want to keep Ravenous Flock if you see the Arachnoid Sentry. You want to play that curve out moderately. You can also save some mana if you wish, if you have good spells and you're afraid of the removal. Like a turn 2 Death's Hand on an important unit's always fine, or a turn 3 Death's Hand is great too. So you can save all that out as well. When you do predict early, you don't want to just take anything. You always have the option to skip on the right, so it'll just give you a free shuffle. So if you do see, like you predict on turn 1 and it's really late game stuff, I wouldn't just take a Leviathan to hold on. You will have more predict later in the game that will allow you to kind of pick that out later. But it depends on matchups. If you're seeing something where you think you're going to need heavy removal, you take it. But if you think you just need a good body to start blocking with or to start applying pressure, you can take a Hunter or an Arachnoid Sentry and go from there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Its matchup table is pretty interesting. And I think it's a little too new, and the meta is even too new to give like exact stats versus each different matchup. There's so many different things, but it's definitely not bad into the heavy rush decks that we've been seeing a lot lately. Dragons have been pretty annoying, but you do have a decent amount of stuns, so you can do that. I'm saying dragons because dragons are becoming popular as we get further and further away from the day of release, because now we're just getting that as a counter to all of the blades and sand soldiers that we're seeing. But yeah, it's a pretty solid deck across the board. It's very, very flexible, so that's why I think it's a really fun deck to start climbing with now. So I'll leave it at that, guys. If you have any questions about the deck or if you play it at all and you want to chime in what you think about it, let me hear it in the comments. And don't forget, like and subscribe. Really, really helps us grow and gets us further and further along the road to get more opportunities. Till next time.